The demolition crew had torn down the last wall of what was once the Grandview Cinema in Willow Creek, California. Dust plumed into the evening sky, tinted orange by the setting sun. A young worker, Mark, was clearing debris near the old projection booth when his shovel struck something soft yet resilient. He knelt, brushing away chunks of plaster and splintered wood. What he uncovered was not a forgotten prop or a piece of old wiring, but a compact, faded leather purse, tucked away in a small, hidden alcove. His breath caught. It was a woman's purse, seemingly untouched by the decades of decay surrounding it. He knew immediately this was not just discarded trash. This was something significant, something that carried a story lost to time. Inside, nestled among dried leaves and cobwebs, lay a cracked mirror, a tube of dried lipstick, and a crumpled movie ticket dated October 27, 2005. A small, tarnished silver locket, shaped like a tiny film reel, rested against a driver's license. The photo on the license showed a vibrant young woman with striking blue eyes and a hopeful smile. Her name was Olivia Maxwell. This purse, this fragment of a life, had been hidden for 17 long years. A silent witness to a mystery that had gripped Willow Creek, then faded into a cold case. The discovery sent a ripple through the quiet town. Olivia Maxwell. The name echoed in the minds of those who remembered the frantic search, the missing person posters, the fading hope. Her disappearance had been abrupt, baffling. She had simply vanished after leaving the Grandview Cinema that autumn night. Now, after nearly 2 decades of silence, her purse had emerged from the shadows of a crumbling building. What secrets did it hold? Who hid it there, and why? The answers lay buried in the past, waiting to be unearthed. Stay with us to uncover the shocking truth behind Olivia Maxwell's disappearance and discover how this singular find unraveled a 17-year-old mystery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Tell us in the comments, from which city are you watching this video? The call came to Sarah Johnson on a Tuesday morning, a date she would forever mark as the day her world shifted again. It was Detective Miller from the Willow Creek Police Department, his voice a somber drone on the line. He spoke of a discovery, a construction site, a purse. Sarah's hand holding the phone trembled. For 17 years, the ghost of Olivia had haunted her every waking moment, a silent presence in the empty rooms of their home. 17 years of unanswered questions, of sleepless nights, of a hope that had long since withered into a fragile, barely flickering ember. Hearing the words Olivia's purse felt like a physical blow, a sudden rush of cold air that both froze and ignited her. The detective described the contents: the old movie ticket, the driver's license, the small film reel locket. Each detail was a sharp, painful memory, yet also a jolt of raw, desperate hope. Olivia's things, after all this time. It meant something, anything, was finally happening. A fresh wound ripped open, but within it lay a chance, however slim, for closure. Soon, Detective Mark Walker arrived at her doorstep, a young man with a serious demeanor and eyes that held a flicker of genuine empathy. He was new to the Willow Creek cold cases, but the weight of this one was immediately apparent. He listened patiently as Sarah, her voice raspy with emotion, recounted the last day she saw Olivia, a trip to the cinema, a casual goodbye, a promise to be home by 10. The endless hours that followed, the growing dread, the futile searches, the crushing silence of the missing persons unit. He reviewed the faded photographs, the old police reports, feeling the heavy burden of a case that had long baffled his predecessors. The purse, now meticulously bagged and tagged as evidence, represented a new beginning, a crack in the wall of silence that had surrounded Olivia Maxwell's disappearance for far too long. The initial investigation had gone cold, choked by a lack of clues, but this single, unexpected find had breathed new life into the dying embers of a forgotten tragedy. The long, agonizing wait was not over, but it had certainly changed. The police forensics lab, a place of sterile surfaces and hushed urgency, became the next stop for Olivia Maxwell's purse. Every item was carefully removed, documented, and analyzed. The old cell phone, a relic of 2005, was a primary focus. Technicians worked meticulously, attempting to extract any data, any last communication that might shed light on Olivia's final hours. They tried every method, every specialized tool available, but the passage of 17 years had been unkind. The battery was long dead, the internal components corroded. The phone yielded no calls, no messages, no digital breadcrumbs. It was a technological dead end, a frustrating silence in a case desperate for answers. The crumpled movie ticket offered little more than a time and date, confirming what was already known. Olivia had been at the Grandview Cinema. The dried lipstick, the cracked mirror, the other personal effects, while poignant reminders of Olivia's life, provided no direct clues to her disappearance. The locket, shaped like a tiny film reel, was unique, but its origin was untraceable through conventional means. Then, the Polaroid photograph. It was small, its colors slightly faded, but the image was clear. Olivia, her bright smile unmistakable, stood beside another young woman, both laughing, their arms linked. This was the most tangible lead they possessed. Detective Walker, holding the photograph, felt a surge of renewed purpose. This was a face, a connection. The other woman in the photo was identified as Emily Green, Olivia's closest friend. Locating Emily Green was straightforward. She still lived in Willow Creek, a quiet life in a small house on the outskirts of town. When Detective Walker arrived, Emily's face, etched with the years, visibly paled at the sight of the photograph. The shock was profound, a sudden reawakening of a pain she had carried for nearly 2 decades, Olivia's purse. The news seemed impossible, yet there it was, irrefutable proof. Emily, her voice barely a whisper, confirmed it was indeed her in the picture with Olivia. She remembered the day it was taken, a carefree afternoon at the town fair just weeks before the disappearance. Emily recounted the night of Olivia's vanishing, a memory she had replayed countless times in her mind. She had been sick with a bad cold that evening, unable to join Olivia at the cinema. Olivia had gone alone. Emily recalled a detail, something she hadn't emphasized in the initial chaotic days of the investigation, a detail that now, after 17 years, seemed incredibly significant. Olivia had mentioned she was meeting someone after the movie, not a specific name, just someone. A mysterious meeting, hinted at casually, now became a focal point. This vague appointment, long forgotten in the flurry of the original search, now offered a potential new direction for Detective Walker's renewed investigation. Emily Green's initial shock slowly gave way to a deep, unsettling conflict. The weight of 17 years of silence pressed down on her. Detective Walker, sensing her hesitation, allowed her time, his presence a quiet, patient insistence. He watched as her eyes darted around the room, as if seeking an escape from a truth she had long buried. The memory of Olivia, vivid and heartbreakingly real now that the purse had reappeared, wrestled with the fear that had kept her quiet for so long. Finally, with a tremor in her voice that was barely audible, Emily confessed. Olivia, she revealed, had been involved in a secret, clandestine relationship with one of their high school teachers, Mr. David Clark. The history teacher, a seemingly respectable married man, had captivated Olivia. Their encounters were always discreet, hidden from the prying eyes of their small community. Emily had been the only one Olivia confided in, burdened with a secret far too heavy for a teenager to carry. The revelation hung in the air, thick with unspoken implications. Emily explained her silence, the reasons that had seemed so compelling at the time. There was the fear of scandal, a small town's judgment always swift and unforgiving. There was Olivia's desperate plea for secrecy, the insistence that her reputation would be ruined, that her future would be irrevocably damaged. Emily had promised to protect her friend, a promise she had honored even in death, unaware that her silence might have hindered the very search for answers. For 17 years, she had carried this heavy burden, believing she was safeguarding Olivia's memory. Now, in the harsh light of the reopened investigation, that loyalty felt like a complicity, a missed opportunity to bring closure. This new information cracked the cold case wide open. The initial theories surrounding Olivia's disappearance had focused on random abduction or a runaway scenario, but a secret affair with a married teacher, a figure of authority, introduced a far more complex and dangerous dynamic. Mr. David Clark, a man long removed from any suspicion, suddenly became the central figure in Detective Walker's inquiry. The missing girl, the hidden purse, the long-held secret, each piece now began to slot into a grim, disturbing puzzle, pointing towards a new and unsettling direction for the investigation. The focus shifted from a chance encounter to a potentially calculated act, deeply rooted in the forbidden connections of Olivia's life. Detective Walker's next immediate step was to locate Mr. David Clark. It took several days of diligent searching through old school records, public databases, and finally, a contact within the state's Retired Teachers Association. Clark, no longer teaching, had moved out of Willow Creek years ago, settling into a quiet retirement in a small, coastal town 3 states away. Walker arranged for an interview, traveling cross-country, carrying the weight of 17 years of unanswered questions. The confrontation took place in a sterile conference room at the local police precinct. David Clark, a man now in his late 60s, with thinning gray hair and a perpetual weariness in his eyes, sat opposite Detective Walker. He was visibly shaken, his composure crumbling under the unexpected reemergence of a chapter he believed was long closed. The mention of Olivia Maxwell's name, combined with the news of her purse's discovery, brought a sudden, raw pallor to his face. He expressed shock, then a profound sadness, claiming he had always wondered what became of her. Clark admitted to the secret relationship, confirming Emily Green's confession. He acknowledged meeting Olivia on the night of her disappearance. He claimed their meeting after the movie was brief, strained. They had argued, he explained, over the clandestine nature of their relationship and Olivia's growing desire for it to be made public. He insisted that he had urged her to be discreet, fearful of the repercussions on his career and family. As the argument intensified, Olivia had abruptly left him, visibly upset. He swore she was alive when he last saw her, walking away from the cinema towards the dimly lit main street. Crucially, Clark added a detail that echoed Emily's earlier vague statement. Olivia, in her frustration, had mentioned needing to meet someone else that night, someone who could help her with a significant personal issue. Clark did not know who this person was, nor the nature of the problem. Clark's testimony, while confirming the affair, also introduced a fresh layer of complexity to the investigation. His account of Olivia meeting an unknown third party after their argument shifted the focus once again. The initial suspicion surrounding him, though still present, was now diluted by this new, elusive figure. Detective Walker left the interview with more questions than answers. The image of Olivia, upset and on her way to meet a mystery person, now firmly etched in his mind. The path to solving Olivia's disappearance, it became clear, was becoming increasingly convoluted, pulling him deeper into the hidden lives of Willow Creek's past. Returning to Sarah Johnson's quiet, mournful home, Detective Walker felt a growing conviction that some crucial piece of the puzzle remained hidden within Olivia's past, perhaps overlooked in the frantic initial searches. He gently explained his need to examine more of Olivia's personal effects, hoping for a detail, a hint, anything that might illuminate the shadows surrounding her final days. Sarah, her eyes still clouded with grief, but now tinged with a fragile hope, led him to Olivia's old bedroom, preserved like a shrine since her disappearance. Among the untouched belongings, the teenage mementos and the dusty books, nestled beneath a pile of old-school notebooks, Walker found it, a small, leather-bound diary, its pages filled with Olivia's neat, youthful handwriting. The diary was a window into Olivia's inner world, detailing her hopes, her anxieties, her dreams of the future. Most entries were typical for a teenager, reflections on school, friends, and the quiet dramas of daily life. But as Walker meticulously turned the pages, he felt a rising tension. The entries grew more infrequent, more cryptic in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. The final entry, dated the very day before she vanished, was strikingly different. It was written in a hurried, almost frantic hand, the ink smudged in places as if by a tear or a hurried brush of a hand. Olivia wrote of a big problem, something that had consumed her thoughts and filled her with dread. The words conveyed a palpable sense of fear, a deep-seated anxiety about consequences and exposure. She hinted at a secret meeting, not with Mr. Clark, but with someone else, someone she believed could help her navigate this perilous situation. There was an overriding sense of desperation, a plea for understanding, even to the empty pages of her journal. "No one would believe me," she had scrawled, the phrase underlined multiple times, conveying a profound sense of isolation and a desperate need for assistance. More intriguingly, the entry contained a cryptic acronym, 3 capital letters, stark and unexplained, followed by a reference to a place Olivia called the Sanctuary. There was no further context, no address, no description, just those 3 letters and the evocative name, hinting at a hidden location of profound significance to Olivia. The discovery of this diary entry, particularly its final desperate message, immediately shifted the entire trajectory of the investigation. It suggested Olivia was not merely the victim of a random act, but was actively embroiled in a desperate situation, seeking help and perhaps attempting to escape from something or someone. The information from Emily Green and Mr. Clark had established Olivia's secret life, but this diary entry suggested an even deeper, more perilous layer to her existence. The question was no longer just what happened to her after leaving the cinema, but what big problem had driven her to seek a mysterious sanctuary, and who was this enigmatic individual she desperately needed to meet? The cold case, now very much alive, had found a new, enigmatic focus: the meaning behind the 3-letter acronym and the location of the sanctuary. The cryptic entry in Olivia's diary, specifically the reference to the sanctuary and the 3-letter acronym, became Detective Walker's new obsession. He spent countless hours poring over old town maps, historical records, and local archives, searching for any institution, building, or even a local landmark that might have been known by such a name. He consulted with local historians and elderly residents, piecing together fragments of local lore and forgotten places. The acronym remained a frustrating mystery, but the name, the Sanctuary, resonated with a faint echo in the town's forgotten past. His diligent research eventually led him to an imposing, dilapidated structure on the furthest outskirts of Willow Creek, an old orphanage, officially known as the Willow Creek Children's Home, but colloquially referred to by some of the oldest residents as the Sanctuary due to its original mission of providing refuge to troubled youth. The building itself was a grim, imposing edifice, its windows shattered, its once grand entrance now boarded up and covered in overgrown vines. It had been abandoned for many decades, shuttered abruptly in the 1970s, after a series of unsettling rumors and a widespread scandal involving alleged mistreatment and suspicious disappearances of several children. The local whispers, persistent through the years, painted a chilling picture of a place steeped in sorrow and dark secrets, a place avoided by the town's inhabitants, who attributed its decay to malevolent spirits. Detective Walker, accompanied by a small team of officers, secured the perimeter and began a meticulous search of the decaying structure. The air inside was thick with dust and the smell of damp decay. They moved cautiously through the vast, empty halls, their flashlights cutting through the gloom, illuminating crumbling plaster and forgotten remnants of a forgotten life. Every room, every dark corner, every creaking floorboard was examined. They searched the deserted dormitories, the desolate classrooms, the cavernous kitchen, and the dark, oppressive basement. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the crunch of their boots on debris and the occasional scuttling of unseen creatures. Hours turned into a long, fruitless effort. Despite the pervasive feeling of unease that clung to the place, the initial search of the main orphanage building yielded no direct evidence. There were no signs of recent activity, no hidden compartments, no disturbing finds that directly linked Olivia Maxwell to the grim edifice. The building seemed to offer only silent indifference, its secrets locked deep within its crumbling walls. The disappointment was palpable. This seemingly promising lead, the sanctuary from Olivia's diary, had led them to another dead end, or so it seemed. The lack of a clear connection was disheartening, but Walker felt an inexplicable pull to the place. The mystery of the three-letter acronym remained, and the very existence of such a deeply hidden and foreboding location felt too significant to dismiss. The cold case remained cold in its essential truth, but the chilling atmosphere of the abandoned orphanage only deepened the enigma surrounding Olivia's final moments. The failure to find any immediate trace of Olivia at the abandoned orphanage, the sanctuary, left Detective Walker with a gnawing sense of frustration. The promising lead from Olivia's diary had seemingly led to a dead end, leaving him to confront the grim reality that 17 years of decay might have erased any physical evidence. He returned to his office, the heavy silence of the cold case file weighing upon him. Despite the fresh leads, the core mystery persisted, stubborn and unforgiving. In an act of methodical desperation, Walker decided to re-examine the original police reports, hundreds of pages of interviews, forensic notes, and dead-end theories from 2005. He reasoned that with a fresh perspective and the advantage of new information, something might have been overlooked, dismissed as irrelevant by investigators lacking the context he now possessed. He spent an entire night immersed in the dusty files, fueled by black coffee and an unwavering determination. Hours passed, marked only by the rustle of paper and the soft hum of the office lights. He skimmed through dozens of witness statements, many from cinema-goers who saw nothing unusual, others from neighbors offering vague sightings, Then, a short, almost dismissive entry caught his eye. It was a statement from a part-time cinema employee, a maintenance worker named Tommy, who had been on duty that night. Tommy's initial testimony had been brief, deemed insignificant at the time. He had reported seeing something strange near the back exit of the cinema, but his description was vague, and he had seemed hesitant, perhaps even confused. The original detectives had apparently dismissed him as an unreliable witness, prone to exaggeration or simply mistaken. Locating Tommy 17 years later proved challenging. Public records showed he had left Willow Creek shortly after Olivia's disappearance, moving to a small, isolated farm in a neighboring county. Walker tracked him down, finding an elderly man, frail but with a surprising clarity of mind when prompted about the distant past. Tommy, now well into his 70s, lived a quiet life, his memory a patchwork of vivid details and hazy blanks. When Detective Walker gently brought up the night of October 27, 2005, and the Grandview Cinema, a flicker of recognition ignited in Tommy's eyes. He remembered the night, the strange feeling that had lingered long after the last movie ended. He recounted, haltingly at first, then with increasing certainty, what he had witnessed. He had been taking out the trash through the back alley when he saw a large man, a regular usher or perhaps a security guard at the cinema, moving with a strange, deliberate urgency. The man was struggling with something heavy, something wrapped tightly in a dark tarp or a heavy blanket. Tommy remembered the sheer size of the bundle, too large and unwieldy for a simple trash bag in the unusual hour. The man had quickly disappeared into the shadows, heading away from the main street towards the less trafficked industrial area behind the cinema. Tommy had dismissed it then, attributing it to late-night deliveries or misplaced equipment. But now, with the chilling context of Olivia's disappearance, his fragmented memory coalesced into something far more sinister. This seemingly insignificant detail, overlooked and disregarded for nearly 2 decades, suddenly provided a critical, tangible lead, pulling the investigation back to the very place where Olivia was last seen alive, the Grandview Cinema itself, and one of its own employees. The cold case had just found a new, unsettling focal point. Tommy's fragmented yet chilling recollection of the large man struggling with a wrapped object near the Grandview Cinema's back exit immediately galvanized Detective Walker. This was a direct, tangible lead, pointing not to a random stranger, but to someone connected to the very place Olivia was last seen. Walker's focus narrowed, shifting entirely to the former employees of the now demolished cinema. The task was daunting. 17 years had passed, and records from a defunct, privately owned business were not easily accessed. Walker began by requesting historical business licenses and employee rosters from the Willow Creek Municipal Archives. The old files were dusty, some incomplete, but piece by piece, he began to reconstruct a list of individuals who had worked at the Grandview Cinema in 2005. He paid particular attention to security personnel, ushers, and maintenance staff, anyone who might fit Tommy's description of a large man working late hours. He cross-referenced names with local public records, looking for residential addresses, dates of birth, and any available physical descriptions. After days of painstaking work, one name consistently surfaced that aligned with Tommy's vague but insistent memory: Frank Mitchell. Mitchell had been employed as a security guard at the Grandview Cinema for several years leading up to Olivia's disappearance. His personnel file indicated a man of considerable stature fitting the large man description. Mitchell had mysteriously resigned from his position at the cinema just weeks after Olivia vanished, a detail that now, in retrospect, seemed far more suspicious than it had at the time. The initial investigation had noted his resignation, but had dismissed it as coincidental given the cinema's eventual closure. The next step was to locate Frank Mitchell. Walker attempted to find current addresses, phone numbers, anything that could lead him to the former security guard. The trail, however, quickly ran cold. Mitchell had left Willow Creek and seemed to have vanished into the vastness of the American landscape. Further inquiries, reaching out to national databases, and even a few of Mitchell's distant relatives listed in old public records, eventually provided a definitive yet crushing piece of information. Frank Mitchell had died 5 years prior from a sudden and massive heart attack. The news hit Detective Walker with a wave of profound frustration. The man who potentially held the key to Olivia's final moments, the one direct link from the cinema to a suspicious act, was gone. The primary suspect, the one person who could confirm or deny Tommy's memory, was beyond the reach of justice or interrogation. It felt like another cruel twist in a case already riddled with them. The pathway to truth seemed to constantly open only to slam shut, leaving him staring at a brick wall. Yet, despite this devastating setback, the focus on the cinema, on the night of Olivia's disappearance, and on the specific time and location Tommy had described, felt more critical than ever. The truth was there, he felt certain, hidden not in the shadows of the abandoned orphanage, but in the unseen corners of the old Grandview Cinema itself, waiting for another, less direct, avenue to be uncovered. The dead man could no longer speak, but perhaps someone else connected to him, or to that night, still could. Frank Mitchell's death was a crushing blow, but Detective Walker refused to let it derail the entire investigation. The cinema, he now firmly believed, held the key, and if the main perpetrator was beyond reach, perhaps an accomplice, a witness, or an unwitting participant was not. His attention turned to the last remaining piece of physical evidence from the cinema: the possibility of old surveillance footage. The task was monumental. In 2005, surveillance technology was rudimentary, and many businesses did not retain footage for long periods, especially after closure. The Grandview Cinema had been demolished, making any on-site recovery impossible. Walker reached out to the cinema's former owner, a man now living in Florida, who, remarkably, remembered having an off-site storage unit where he kept old business records, including, he thought, some backup tapes of security footage from the final years of operation. The tapes were old, fragile, and some were damaged, but with the help of specialized forensic video analysts, a painstaking process of recovery began. Days blurred into weeks as technicians worked in a controlled environment, meticulously trying to salvage any usable frames from the deteriorating magnetic reels. The quality was poor, grainy, and indistinct, but every flicker, every shadow was scrutinized. Then, a breakthrough. On a tape labeled for October 2005, a few crucial minutes of footage from a camera positioned near the back exit of the cinema were recovered. The resolution was barely adequate, but the movements were discernible. It showed Frank Mitchell, indeed a large, imposing figure, moving towards the back door with purpose. He wasn't alone. Briefly, a second person entered the frame. A young woman, slender, her face partially obscured by the poor lighting and camera angle. She was clearly a cinema employee, identifiable by her uniform. She appeared to be engaged in an intense, hushed conversation with Mitchell, her body language conveying a mix of apprehension and reluctant compliance. Her head was bowed, and she occasionally glanced nervously over her shoulder, as if fearing discovery. A few minutes later, the footage showed Mitchell again, this time struggling with the same large, tarp-wrapped object Tommy had described. And there, almost imperceptibly, the young woman reappeared, lending a hesitant hand, helping Mitchell maneuver the heavy, unwieldy bundle out of the back exit and into the night. It was a brief, chilling sequence, but it was undeniable proof of a second party's involvement. The initial shock of seeing an accomplice quickly turned into determination. Walker immediately cross-referenced the employee rosters again, looking for a young female cashier or usher who worked the late shift on October 27, 2005. The name that matched the employee schedule for that night was Maggie Miller, a young woman who had worked the front counter. A quick check of the original case files revealed a stark realization. Maggie Miller had been interviewed by the initial investigators. She had told them she saw nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary that night. Her statement had been clean, unwavering, a seemingly reliable account. Now, the grainy recovered footage revealed a profound and chilling deception. Maggie Miller had not only been present, but she had actively assisted Frank Mitchell. Her previous testimony, a lie of omission, made her an immediate and crucial person of interest. Frank Mitchell might be dead, but Maggie Miller was alive, and after 17 years of silence, she finally had a terrifying truth to reveal. The cold case had found its new, living witness, and potentially, its final, terrifying piece. Armed with the grainy but damning surveillance footage, Detective Walker moved swiftly to locate Maggie Miller. She had moved out of Willow Creek years ago, married, and was now living under her husband's surname in a quiet suburb. Several states away, the change of identity was a common tactic for those trying to escape a past, but it wasn't enough to elude a determined detective. Walker arrived at her doorstep unannounced, the weight of 17 years of silence and Olivia Maxwell's unfinished story palpable in his presence. Maggie, now in her late 30s, answered the door. Her initial reaction was one of polite confusion, quickly replaced by a visible tremor of unease as Walker introduced himself and mentioned the Grandview Cinema. When he softly uttered Olivia Maxwell's name, her face drained of color, betraying the carefully constructed normalcy of her life. He didn't need to say much more. He simply placed a tablet on her kitchen table, displaying the recovered surveillance footage from that fateful night, her eyes fixated on the flickering images of herself, young and terrified, helping Frank Mitchell move the heavy wrapped object. The truth, long suppressed, was now undeniable, exposed in the harsh light of resurrected pixels. Her composure shattered, tears streamed down her face as the floodgates of her buried guilt burst open. She confessed everything, her voice a raw, broken whisper. Frank Mitchell, she explained, had been a terrifying presence in her young life. He had discovered a minor transgression she had committed, something inconsequential like pilfering small amounts from the register, and had used it to brutally blackmail her. He held her career and her very freedom hostage. On the night of Olivia's disappearance, Mitchell had been frantic. He claimed he had caught Olivia attempting to steal from the cinema's office, and in a struggle, she had accidentally fallen, striking her head with fatal force. He had panicked, believing his reputation and job would be ruined. Maggie, terrified and entrapped by his threats, had reluctantly agreed to help him dispose of the body, believing it was an unfortunate accident, not a calculated murder. But then Maggie revealed the truly shattering detail, a truth that had haunted her nightmares for 17 years and changed the entire complexion of the case. As they wrapped Olivia's body, she saw it, a small, almost imperceptible swell in Olivia's abdomen. Olivia Maxwell had been pregnant. Mitchell had noticed it too, and his initial panic had morphed into a chilling determination to ensure no one ever found the body or the truth about Olivia's condition. This detail had not been known to the original investigators. It had been buried with Olivia. Maggie, trembling, then led Walker to the true location of Olivia's resting place. Frank Mitchell, she explained, had known about a hidden, secret bunker beneath the abandoned Willow Creek children's home, the place Olivia had called the Sanctuary. It was not the main building that held the secret, but a concealed subterranean structure, an old, forgotten fallout shelter built during the Cold War and sealed off from the rest of the orphanage. Mitchell, having once worked odd jobs at the property years ago, had discovered its forgotten entrance. He had used it as a clandestine hiding place, a secure vault for their terrible secret. Maggie described the precise location, a section of the basement wall that appeared solid but concealed a false panel, a hidden entrance to a forgotten tomb. Her confession, though agonizing, brought a sudden, decisive clarity to the case. The long, agonizing wait was finally nearing its end. The truth, brutal and heartbreaking, was within reach. Maggie Miller's harrowing confession, raw and punctuated by her wrenching sobs, provided Detective Walker with the final, horrifying piece of the puzzle. The fragmented details of Olivia's diary, the cryptic sanctuary, and the three-letter acronym now clicked into place with chilling precision. Walker immediately mobilized a specialized police team, including forensic experts and excavation crews, heading back to the abandoned Willow Creek children's home with a grim, singular purpose. This time they knew exactly where to look. The operation at the desolate orphanage began under the somber light of dawn. The team converged on the decaying basement, Maggie Miller's trembling finger guiding them to a specific section of the wall. It appeared to be an ordinary, solid brick and mortar structure, indistinguishable from the surrounding crumbling masonry. Yet, Maggie's desperate certainty, born of years of haunting guilt, compelled them forward. Using ground-penetrating radar and then careful, methodical demolition tools, the crew began to chip away at the old wall. The air was thick with dust and the oppressive weight of impending revelation. Every swing of the sledgehammer, every chip of concrete, felt like a step closer to a truth long denied. After an hour of intense, focused work, the hidden truth revealed itself. Behind the false wall, not a hollow space, but a reinforced steel door, rusted and partially concealed, emerged from the debris. It was indeed a forgotten Cold War-era bunker, sealed off from the world for decades, perfectly camouflaged. The forensics team worked with grim efficiency to breach the heavy door, the sound of grinding metal echoing eerily through the silent orphanage. What lay beyond was a small, confined space, cold and dank, preserved in an almost surreal stillness. And there, within the oppressive confines of the bunker, Olivia Maxwell was finally found. Her remains were discovered carefully positioned, almost reverently, despite the terrible circumstances of her death. The discovery brought a wave of profound sorrow, a silent acknowledgement of the life lost and the years of a mother's unanswered grief. The missing person case that had haunted Willow Creek for 17 years was finally, tragically, solved. Near Olivia's remains, amidst the dust and the profound stillness, lay a small, sealed plastic bag, miraculously preserved. Inside, the forensic team found several crumpled letters, handwritten and addressed simply to M. These letters, though faded, told a deeply personal and tragic story. They were from Olivia, filled with a mixture of fear, desperation, and pleas. They spoke of her pregnancy, the big problem she had alluded to in her diary, and the profound distress she felt. The letters revealed that M was Marcus, her boyfriend, the father of her unborn child. He was connected to the orphanage, having worked there years ago on a volunteer basis, which explained his knowledge of the hidden bunker. Olivia's words painted a chilling picture of Marcus's refusal to accept the pregnancy, his escalating threats, and his terrifying demand that she keep their relationship and the child a secret. The cryptic acronym M in Olivia's diary, the symbol of her desperate fear, now stood revealed as Marcus, the man who had driven her to seek a sanctuary from his own brutal intentions. The case had shifted definitively